Shalom, this is Shira Sorbo coming to you from a playground right around the corner from my house in Sfat, Israel. And I'm really excited to talk to you during this 8 days of Hanukkah. And I'm in a playground because, usually when we have a holiday, it's about educating the next generation, just passing down the stories, passing down our values to the next generation. And so the word Hanukkah actually comes from a word Hanuk, and Hanuk means to educate. So if we're going to educate our children about one of the messages from Hanukkah, one of the obvious things would be to be a light to the world. And it's so easy to be a light. It doesn't have to be these big things that we do. I heard a great story of someone named Simon Sinek that was doing a TED Talk, and he didn't say be a light. He used different words, but his basic message was the same. It's these little acts of kindness that we do, and then people around us are inspired, and then they do acts of kindness, and that's how we light up this dark world. And so his story was that he and his friend were just walking down the street talking, and in front of them was a guy, and his backpack was unzipped a little bit and some papers flew out. So Simon and his friend, he said, they just reached down, they both, scooped up some papers, they handed them to the guy, they kind of pointed, your backpack's unzipped. They kept talking, they kept their conversation up, it was no big deal. They get to the corner and there's this guy standing there, and he goes, I saw what you did back there, I saw how you guys picked up that guy's papers. He said, that was pretty cool. And so you could tell, that he was just inspired. And I have a friend, she loves to tell the story of how she really wanted to do something big for God. And she was like, God, whatever you want me to do, I'll do. Climb the highest mountain. You just tell me what you want me to do. And she felt like God told her, I want you to smile, and I want you to be the first one to say hello. So, when I see her, she's always smiling. She's always the first one to say hello. So our message to our children, and of course we lead by example, is to be givers and not takers. And we're just robbing our children of the pleasure that comes from being a giver. I got to be, it was the coolest thing that happened this past Friday night. And I just felt so good. But what happened, we were at the shul, and it's Shabbat, and the way that our shul is set up is all the men are downstairs and all the women and children are upstairs. And I usually really don't tune into the children because I don't know the language, and they usually just want their mother. And so I always kind of feel helpless to do much. But I was inspired by my friend, who she noticed that there was this little 2-year-old girl that was trying to get up on a chair so she could sit next to her sister, and she was struggling, and nobody was really paying attention. Her mother had the baby, but my friend noticed this little girl, and she just went over there without missing a beat. We're singing our songs, saying our prayers. She just goes over, picks up the little girl, sits her in the chair, and I noticed that, and I'm like, wow, that was pretty cool. So I was inspired, and so when it's getting time to leave and we're all going down the stairs, there's always like a little, maybe an 8-year-old that gets in charge of giving out a piece of candy to all the children. And the kids, they just live for this moment. So they're all getting their piece of candy, thank you for coming, here's your candy, thank you for coming, here's your candy. And I noticed in front of me, there's this little 2 or 3-year-old boy just crying the most pathetic, horrible cry. Nobody's paying attention to him. And I tune into him, and I'm thinking, well, if I just had to guess why he's crying, I'm thinking he didn't get a piece of candy. And so we kind of, motioned to that kid who had been giving out the candy. He's just about to leave. We're like, no, come back, you missed somebody. And so he comes back, and so he really doesn't realize which one he missed, and he's giving out some candy again. And so at this point, some of the kids are putting out their hand, getting their second piece of candy, and doesn't he overlook the same little boy again? And the little boy, at first he gets excited because, oh, good, I'm going to get my candy. And then his face just drops because there goes the candy. He didn't see me. And then so we're like, no, go back. You still missed him. And so even if you don't know the language, you can play charades and you can you can communicate these things. And so finally this little boy gets his piece of candy. And so my friend is like, way to go, And so we each had done our good deed for the night by just keying in, just having eyes to see. Little people around us have these little needs. And so it can be picking up papers for a stranger. It can be smiling and being the first one to say hello. You know, it can be opening the door for someone. It can be you get up to get yourself a drink, see if anybody else wants a drink. There's so many ways to be a giver, carrying some groceries in for somebody. And we don't want to rob our children of the pleasure that you feel when you are a giver. And if their kids are always thinking, you know, well, what are you going to do for me? What are you going to buy for me? What am I going to get? You know, the me, that's very temporary little pleasure. But if you can instill in them, by example, like a lifestyle of being a giver, even being a good listener to people that just need to vent or something. You know, we've been talking about this, like, this started with our forefather Abraham. He was just such a giver. Well, it started with God, and we're made in the image of God. God is a giver. And so we all need to, when we see these Hanukkah lights, let's just think about how are we going to be a light in a dark world. And then it's amazing how we affect other people around us, and they see us, just like I was inspired by my friend, and we're inspired by other people, and we can inspire other people. So happy Hanukkah. Think about being a giver every time you see these lights. Be a light to the world. All right, so Shabbat Shalom, and we will see you next time.